Welcome. Today I'm joined by Lena Hök, Executive Vice President of Sustainability and Innovation at Skanska. Skanska is a construction and project development company based out of Sweden, and Lena has been in her position since 2021. Lena, thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for inviting me.
To get our conversation started, let's talk about carbon emission disclosure. There's increasing pressure from regulators, investors, and other stakeholders for organizations to disclose their carbon emissions. Voluntary carbon disclosure is increasing. Just last year, I believe there was an increase in 40% of companies actually disclosing their carbon emissions. At Skanska, you've been doing this since 2008, so for 16 years. Can you just share a little bit why you got started so early?
Well, to give a bit of a context, Skanska started with ISO 14001 certification as well as environmental reporting before 2000. That means that we had already been up and running in how to identify the most impactful areas when it comes to our footprint. And of course, being an engineer company, you do measure what actually matters. And that means to us, carbon matters when it comes to our environmental footprint. And that was also a drive for us to start to measuring it.
And how has this disclosure shaped the way you create your strategy and also how you're being perceived by external stakeholders?
I think one important thing that happened for us was the realization of when we are measuring our carbon footprint as well as our sustainability impact, it's so important with standards and being able to benchmark best practice with others, cross markets and also cross projects. So we have been really involved when it comes to participate in developing industry-wide different kinds of certifications, such as LEED when it comes to buildings or Envision when it comes to how to measure sustainable impact on infrastructure or the level system for EU. So that has been an important driver for us, how to be able to make sure that whatever we come up with is possible also to compare to others.
So that it becomes an industry-wide norm.
Yeah, an industry-wide norm and standard. And that's also a way actually how to approach customers. Because if you are stating you have some kind of sustainability performance, you need to be able to state it in a common way with common KPIs, being able for the customers or the investors to compare between different kinds of projects.
How do you use climate-based scenarios to help you shape your strategy?
In our climate scenario analysis, we have been quite long-term or an outlook at least on 10 years or beyond. So that means from a project level, we usually take the findings from our scenario analysis and think of what does that mean for a project. Like maybe, for example, the importance of life cycle analysis in our projects, and not just to look for a certain period, but a more long-term period of the project and its impact. As well as another aspect is also the realization for the need for how to build for resiliency in projects. So that means, for example, an understanding of the increasing risks of extreme weather, including flooding. So we have applied a tool from Jupiter when it comes to how to do actually risk analysis on the land we buy, or when we are developing a project on land we buy, making sure that we have taken well into account a long-term approach on how to mitigate those risks.
As a company, you want to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2045, which is an important goal. When it comes to your workforce, to your people, what do you do to actually help them develop the skills and competencies that they need to take part in the journey and to be able to contribute to this goal?
One aspect is that we are continuously reminding everyone about our goals. So when we're talking about our financial targets, we are usually also mentioning how we're doing when it comes to our sustainability or climate target as well. Then we have made sure that all of our business units in all markets have market-adapted climate plans with their key activities also identified. And by that also making sure that they have focus on awareness or capability training, because we do know that there's quite difference in maturity in different markets. And that also means in some of the more mature markets, we also have a much more specific training program. So, for example, in the UK, there are different programs for different kinds of roles, and specifically those roles where you are doing planning or design. It's important to understand how do you take into account the life cycle analysis, as well as to ensure if you're designing for different kinds of use of materials, also take into account not just the cost and quality, but also the carbon footprint. I may mention actually one really good example from the US, and that is we did recognize that there was a lack of tools in the US market on how to measure the climate and carbon footprint on materials in the US market. And that meant that we actually took capabilities and knowledge of how to do environmental product declarations, so the knowledge of how to use that kind of information for a product or materials, and how to do those kinds of carbon calculations. We took that knowledge from Sweden and transferred it to our US colleagues. And they started to build a database with more than 10,000 environmental product declarations, EPDs. And this database, we did it together also with partners. We made it open source, call it EC3. The Embodied Construction Carbon Calculator.
Wow.
And today, I think there is more than 100,000 environmental product declarations in this database, and it also has a calculation tool. And since it's being open source, anyone, so that means material providers or designers or architects or our peers and competitors within the industry, everyone can use this tool in order to see already in the planning phase or in the design, what kind of choice of materials, how it actually impacts the carbon footprint of your project. So I would say that is a way to raise the capability. You also need to ensure, do you have the tools, do you have the knowledge and the data available for people to actually make the right choices?
So it really helps you by having these coded product types to get a much better understanding of what the overall footprint of your finalized construction site actually is.
Yeah, that's vital. Knowledge is vital, and having the data and knowing how to use this knowledge in those early phases, that is what's really important to us. And I think on our journey when it comes to measure impact, we have understood more and more how vital that knowledge and expertise we have within Skanska, how important it is for us to use it in the very early stages to also guide our customers or being involved as an early contractor involvement. Because it's in the early phases of a project, when you set the design, that's where you can really impact. And at times we have examples on projects where we have changed the design to actually make it much more efficient in the project, but by that also cutting materials, and by that actually cutting carbons and costs.
I guess, and that is only possible if you have the detailed understanding of what different options actually entail.
Absolutely. So that's why we need to have those kind of tools that are, so that's coming down to tech. So having those kinds of tools that is actually helping us on how to make those informed choices.
Above and beyond tools and skills and competencies, what kind of mindset shifts do you see that are required within Skanska to actually help you make that transition into a carbon neutral world?
Okay, so there are three vital ones. And the first one I have already mentioned, the early contractor involvement. So for us to be at an early stage sharing our insights with our customers and on impacting the design and the planning. The second one that is really important is for us to have the mindset of how are we creating customer value, also by actually cutting carbon. So that means for us to also think of what does it mean for a customer. For example, if you are buying real estate and you have a long-term ownership of a lot of buildings, you are, as a customer, you are really interested in how are you able to operate that building much more smoothly, much more efficient, energy efficient. And for us to come up with different solutions on how to do the outermost energy efficient building, to remind ourselves it does not just cut carbon, it's also cost efficient. Or even to drive it even further, coming to how can we serve our customers by actually making it an energy positive building, a building that is producing more energy than what is needed to operate. And of course, all of this takes a lot of knowledge. And by that, I would like to state the third one. You need to have the curiosity within Skanska to make sure that you have the knowledge from all of Skanska, because we are operating both in the US and in Europe. And there are, I dare to say, a lot of the time, there is some project or someone somewhere that has the expertise and knows what you need to know and what you need to find out in your project, and to have the curiosity to search for that knowledge and then apply it and scale it in other projects.
Is there any specific way how you build that curiosity, or how you help your employees to actually also find out about the climate goals and how they can influence them?
Actually, we're doing that both internally and externally. So internally, we have different kinds of networks on sustainability and innovation group network, SIGN, we call it. We also have knowledge hubs, very much leaning both towards sustainability and innovation, because a lot of these are new solutions and new technologies where we need to share and learn from different kinds of expertise. So we have knowledge hubs when it comes to, for example, AI solutions, when it comes to different kinds of materials, low carbon concrete, wood. And a lot of those knowledge hubs go across different markets and business units, and also possible to share. Of course, it's not just within Skanska we can learn. We also learn externally, and we also share this kind of knowledge. So we have a podcast, Shaping Sustainable Places. You can find it on Spotify. And we also have a website where we are telling these kinds of stories, and we are interviewing people and experts, both internally and external experts, including customers as well, because we want to share the different kinds of solutions and the challenges and opportunities, because our sector is quite complex. We have a wide value chain, and it's important to be able to make all of those competences coming across, because it's not just one solution that matters. We need to be able to combine a lot of different solutions.
In general, buildings account for a massive amount of the overall carbon emissions. How is Skanska helping your customers to actually become more sustainable?
Well, I did mention the energy when it takes to operate a building long term. So, but maybe to state the key aspects in our industry, it's all about energy and materials. And energy, that's account for the energy taken for operating a building during its lifetime, and to be able to deliver energy plus houses. For example, we have a concept we call the powerhouse, but we have been building these kinds of energy plus houses in several markets. Another aspect is, of course, also the energy that it takes for us during the construction phase. And that mostly comes down to heavy machinery and operating those on fossil-free or even emission-free. So that means to electrify the machinery on work sites. And you may wonder, how does that actually make our customers happy? But to then know that about half of our revenue comes from public procurement. So those are actually the ones, the politicians that are procuring, for example, for developing a certain neighborhood or doing infrastructure projects. For example, when half of our business is actually coming from public procurement and doing the metro system in LA or developing the metro here in Stockholm. It's of course a lot of noise from heavy machinery if they're operating the traditional way. What we are starting to do now is actually to be able to electrify heavy machinery. And on the plus side is, of course, the carbon emissions reduces. But also you have the air pollutions that is being reduced. You have much less noise. And all of that, for those that are living in the nearby, they are, of course, have an appreciation of having a work site next door, having less air or, for that part, noise pollution. That's very much appreciated. So those are some of the aspects. Or for that part,
Super.
to use the EC3 tool or other carbon calculations tools, also to show our customers how we can reduce carbon.
Are there any other technology solutions or any other technologies that play an important role in helping you and customers to reduce carbon emissions besides what you already mentioned?
I think we are only in the beginning on how we can use different kinds of tech solutions, foremost within smart buildings. And that means how you are operating a building and its efficiency when it comes to light, when it comes to water efficiency or energy. So how you're steering and operating and building for higher efficiency. By that, actually having a lot of sensors within a building, making sure that you can measure the usage, and you can also, through the tech solutions and also having a feedback loop, seeing how a building is being used, and then you can also make sure that you are shifting the needs, for example, being able to steer the lights or the energy needed. That's only in the beginning.
Thank you. Let's shift the focus a little bit to yourself. There's a lot of regulation coming out in different places on a very continuous basis around sustainability, around carbon emissions. How do you personally stay on top of all these changing regulations and manage the overall complexity that comes with that?
Well, I am pretty curious, and that's an advantage because I read a lot and I try to stay updated when it comes to the news. But of course, you need more than that. So also having networks like Skanska is being part of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and has been that for a long time. There is a special pathway called the built environment. And there we are exploring both the challenges and opportunities, as well as making sure that we are updated on what is happening and what is impacting the built environment. Also working very closely to public affairs. I dare to state, and I think common to a lot of people working with sustainability, that public affairs today, the majority of the stuff that is on the table is either focusing on sustainability regulations or actually the tech development and innovations going on. So also working quite closely there to understand. To mention as well is, of course, the IMD having a sustainability network for CSOs. I also find that valuable because there you can share expertise or experiences in a way that make you challenge each other, or for that part, understand what works or what may be more challenging.
Given the demands of a role such as yours, what do you do to maintain your own personal well-being, to manage the stress, to manage the pressures of the job?
I think it's important to realize what's your work life, but also being able to relax and to shift your focus. So to me, that means family, friends, as well as I love being out in the garden, doing some gardening or yoga. I read a lot of books. Just those things that makes me relax and does not have anything to do with my work, but it's just recharging my batteries. Then again, I also have to admit, I do have a lot of fun at work, and that is also recharging my batteries, mostly to have those kinds of dialogues that are with others that have great insights. That's also a way to recharge.
And how would you describe yourself as a leader within Skanska? What is your style of leading?
One important aspect to me is to cherish the knowledge of the team. I'm quite fortunate because in Skanska, we have heads of sustainability in all of our markets. They have their sustainability organization. I have a team at headquarters, and making sure that we are using the collective intelligence of all of those bright minds and all that expertise throughout Skanska. So if there's something I think my team and those working with sustainability and innovation throughout Skanska have heard me say a lot is regarding collective intelligence and how to use the strength and the knowledge from our projects and all through Skanska. And also to make sure that way of thinking of collective intelligence, that you dare to share, that you are sharing challenges, that you are also bragging or sharing opportunities, successes, and that you're curious about it. And not just being curious, but yet that you're actually applying it and scaling it. So for all of us to have that kind of a team mindset, that we become stronger together, that's, to me, very important.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. It's wonderful to hear about your insights and your experiences.
Thank you.